Welcome back to my mental health and crime channel. My name is Huda London. I'm a licensed cognitive behavior therapist and a licensed mental health counselor. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy the contents in this channel. Today I'd like to go back to the case of the Idaho 4. May the victims rest in peace, condolence to the families, and may the correct justice be served. But I guess it doesn't look like that's going to happen according to what I believe. Brian Christopher Kohlberger has not only pleaded guilty, he signed it, the hearing is over, he pleaded to 4 counts of unalivings and 1 count of burglary. So that is 5 charges that will continue right after each other. We may never know the reason to why he took the plea deal. People have taken plea deals whether they have been guilty or innocent. Doesn't happen often that innocent people take a plea deal, but sometimes they're put in a situation where they have no other choice. We've heard the family of Kohlberger has been threatened, and we have heard that Kohlberger himself has been threatened. The hearing was really sad, heartbreaking, vulnerable, just to think about the situation not only the victims has been through, but even the surviving families. Their families are going through a very vulnerable time. They're vulnerable to social media, mainstream media. They've never got peace within these 2 years, 2 years and 8 months and 8 days to be exact, since this tragic, horrific quadruples has happened. I can imagine the town, the city of Idaho, Moscow, and Idaho must have lost months and years of peace, the harmony, the little life they were used to. But this was a high-profile case, just like it's supposed to be, because a quadruple happened. This doesn't happen often in the world. Mass murders do happen. Yes, shootings happen. Young kids in college, high school, going out and holding classmates, teachers, staff, schools as a hostage situation. That happens. That's a mass unaliving. This wasn't a SK. SKs do not work in the way Kohlberger works. SKs have their own specific ways of working. They usually go out for a certain kind of description. If they like, just say girls that are blonde, they'll go out for the same pattern, maybe dress code, age, hair color. They go for certain things and then they study people's vulnerabilities. But an SK doesn't go and commit a mass murder. That's unheard of. So that one the mainstream news media can stop spreading that. Brian Kohlberger ain't no Ted Bundy or Dahmer. He ain't BTK. He's weird in his own way, but there's no proof up to today that I personally have seen that convinces me enough that here is the evidence. I can see that Koberger parked his car, literally walked inside the house, that's something else. Maybe it'll come out since they've opened the gag orders. But I doubt. I've never said that Koberger was never in the areas. I've just said I don't believe Koberger or one man, unless you're John Wick, I don't believe one man came into an unknown house who never knew any of the victims. Let's start from there. William Thompson said, "We have not found any connections to Koberger knowing any of the victims in this house." That is really important. Now, when you don't have motives and you have no targets, then why are you blaming this guy? Is it because he's weird? Or is it because you needed someone to put the blame on? Was he a patsy? Is he the scapegoat that is being used in the situation? I've always said, I don't believe it's the police that did a cover-up or the prosecutors. I don't believe that at all. I believe it's the surviving roommates, these friends of the victims, all the peoples that we see allegedly all of a sudden doing nice interviews like David Baracho, trying to convince us that he was a sober watch that night. Those are the people who I believe were involved. Just look at what was going on there. Look at the movements. Look at who was roaming around. Now, another thing that I still stick by my opinion, that the fraternities and the college students did it most likely, and that it's impossible for Koberger, I'm not saying it's impossible, but most unlikely that one person could have done this horrific crimes, is because, let me read this to y'all. I looked inside the bedroom. Xana was laying, and it was obvious an intense struggle had occurred. Xana was obviously deceased. There was blood smeared on various items in the room and all over the floor. There was blood cast off on the walls in various places, including above Xana's body. Xana was on her back on the floor in the center of the room with the head towards the west. Then it goes on by saying Xana was in her underwear and a long-sleeved gray shirt. Both her shirt and her underwear were covered in red liquid. Xana's face and body was covered in dried red liquid. I could see what appeared to be defensive knife wounds on Xana's hand. There was a deep gash on Xana's left hand between her pointer finger and her thumb. So this is what gets me. Xana was stabbed 52 times. May she rest in peace. That is really, really chilling to hear. Because we were always told by Steve Gongalves, obviously he would know his daughter's autopsy results, and he said that Kaylee was stabbed 54 times, if you remember. But it was actually the opposite. It was Xana that had 52 stab wounds. And over 30, or at least 30 of them were defensive wounds. Her hands were severed. So imagine what they all have been through. But what I'm trying to say, point being, for Xana to have received all those defensive wounds, I don't believe it was one attacker she was fighting with. One person can't go amok, go wild, go lunatic on a person to stab them 52 times. And then he stabbed Kaylee 22 times. Let's do the maths. That's 74 stab wounds. And that is without Maddie, Morgan, and that is without Ethan. Keep that in mind. Just between Kaylee and Xana, we have 74 stab wounds. So are we trying to still say that it was one person who did it? I do not believe that. I believe that these college students, these so-called suspects, alternatives that I have been showing on my channels, nothing has changed, my belief. After watching these hearings, I'm not saying that BK did not look weird. Yes, he did. As a mental health counselor, I have to be very careful about what I say about in mental health terms. Like the word psychopath, we don't use. It's antisocial personality disorder. Wake up, people. We don't live in the 1920s. They're words that are not supposed to be used. That's a mental health no-no. People are just running around with the words and terms like incel and SKs these days, and antisocial personality disorder, which is the right term of a psychopath. The way Aliviri was addressing Koberger, calling him a sociopath and a psychopath, you can't be both, my dear, at the same time. And just because a person could look like he is suffering of mental health illnesses doesn't necessarily mean he is suffering of what people are guessing. The terms psychopath, antisocial personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder, because it's a disorder. To be a narcissistic, and when it goes to a stage where it is out of control, that you're literally manipulating other people. This is a brain disorder, antisocial personality disorder, psychopath. So when I was listening to many creators yesterday and trying to take it easy. I was shocked with this whole case. And I was listening to people, many creators that have worked really hard in proving that there were alternative suspects who did it. And I could really see the disappointment they had in them. But one of them kept on saying, look at Koberger. He looks like a psychopath. When I saw through his eyes, I knew it was over. He did it. That is wrong. You can't judge a person by the way they look like, or because they give you that certain look in the face that they could have done it. Yes, the face, the looks that he gives, he shows no emotions and no remorse. But guess what? That is what an antisocial personality disorder symptoms are like. It's not that they choose to be lack of empathy. Yes, Koba can be suffering of antisocial personality disorder, I agree. Maybe he's not choosing to react. It's not a choice. It is something he can't control, because most of antisocial personality disorders cannot control their behavior. They usually don't come to therapy. It is actually very interesting. One of a certain group of people that don't come to therapy, that are usually very difficult for them to come to therapy, is antisocial personality disorder. We shouldn't use the term psychopaths, it's offensive, but those people never come to therapy because, to start with, they don't believe they have a problem. So how could you send someone to therapy when they believe that there's no problem? So they usually come to therapy when they're forced. Like example, when the judge sends them to therapy. Otherwise they're going to end up in prison. Then they will make sure they come because it is in their benefit. So they're very good in charming, manipulating, they're very calculated. That is why when people don't even understand the terms that they're using anymore. If Koberger was a psychopath, he wouldn't be leaving a knife sheet along. He would have been very more calculated. With his intelligence, this is a man who finished bachelor's in psychology. He finished his master's and he was doing his PhD, his first semester. I'm not saying it's impossible. Obviously, when you plan, God forbid, to do unalivings, it's not going to turn the way you expect it to turn. But when you're a person who just say a police officer, You're used to all the stupid crimes criminals make. You're going to try to avoid making those crimes. So Koberger was one of the top students, according to his master's, what's it called? What was an professor, and according to D cells, and according to what's her name, Catherine Ramslin, the famous SK professor who writes books on BTK and all, she even thought that Koberger was one of her favorites. So these people have studied BK. Because what I mean by studied, Catherine wouldn't have. She would have understood that there's something not right with Koberger. But the problem is that people are too busy judging how his appearance looks. And I think his appearance, his eyes, he's got that stare in his eyes because there could be mental health illness. This is all my speculations. I'm putting it out there. But I think it could be possible. I look more into the part that Koberger struggled of heroin. Once you're a like you're under serious addictions like H, then you have a big problem. And he was supposed to be using it for 5 years. We heard his friend saying she was driving him around. There's a difference. I'm saying Koberger was a rug user. I'm not saying he's an unaliver. And if he was there that night and he unalived these poor victims, I am standing out clearly and I won't change this words. Impossible that he did this by himself. Impossible. For somebody to have stabbed Xana 52 times and Kaylee 22 times. We're talking about 74 stab wounds. And then Maddie had a couple of stab wounds. And then we have Ethan and his leg and everything. May they all fall rest in peace. They need to stop this. And I found it very interesting that there was the firecracker that was thrown at the door. What do you think happened? I think we finally gotten to find out what was the escapoto evidence. It was the loud bang of the firecracker that the neighbor and Bethany Funk both heard at a certain time. Makes sense. And I was wondering to myself, could the firecracker, or whether it could have been, Brian Enton said he thinks it was a car speeding off. I don't think it would have. I'm sure it made the sparks or the noise of a firecracker for them to be using that word. And if that was the case, I wonder if that is the escapoto evidence that, what's her name, BF would have. Because let's not forget, Ann Taylor said that the escapoto evidence with BF is something that is unique to her, different from what her roommate, surviving roommate, DM knows. So she has something, she has a perspective of something that she saw that is unique for her. So maybe it was the firecracker. So my question is, could the firecracker have been, if you remember the boys running in Banfield, and if you remember the Four Figures, and if you remember what was happening behind the bushes in Taylor Avenue, could it be that people were hiding in the bushes and they were giving each other signals like, we're here, like, let's get it on, we're standing in front of the house? Do you think it was a signal warning? Just like I believe Eric Gower, there's something with that driver that doesn't make sense. It seems like he knows DM more than Kaylee and Maddie. He's no family driver like Steve Gonzalez was saying, I doubt. Let me come back to what I just read to you about Ethan and Xana. And we still haven't gone to Kaylee and Maddie. I've been making a couple of clips about this, but just to let you all know, I'm not being stubborn. I'm sticking to my opinion because make it make sense. That's the words I've been using for 2 years and 8 months on this channel. Make this make sense. I've become a question mark question, and I'm tired of that. The more they come out with these things they're releasing, and thank God they're releasing the gag orders, the more questionable it gets. Xana was lying. It was obvious an intense struggle had occurred. Xana was obviously deceased. May God bless her soul. There was blood smeared on various items in the room and all over the floor. So were people actually... Do y'all think, guys, do y'all really think that, could it be possible that they wrote something on the walls? Because people on our channel will remember clearly we have spoken many times about this. Many times. Could they have written something on the walls with blood? Were they trying to give a message? Could these students have messed with the wrong rug people? I don't believe, up to today, nothing has made me change my mind to believe it's the Aryan Nation or that is bigger rug dealers. I believe it's the local ones, and maybe one step ahead of the local ones. The local ones would be like Bailey, Emma Bailey, and Demetrius. So I believe it's someone above them. I believe this has more to do with the university, honestly, because you have to look at who are they protecting you. It doesn't look like most likely they're protecting the students. They demolished the house immediately. So were they protecting the students? I don't think so. Ethan was found on the other side of the room, so it looked like he was basically half on the bed and half on the floor. They did not mention about his legs being carved like they mentioned it in, what's it called, Dateline. But they said that it was visible bleeding towards his legs. So that should explain everything. I believe the frats were involved because this was personal. Things were written on the wall. They smudged things on the wall. 3 unidentified male DNAs was found there, so let's not forget that. It's important that we stick to ours until we have our research done in our way. It's not about, the main thing in life is about, show me the evidence. Where's the evidence? If you show me the evidence, show me Koberger entering this house and getting himself involved in this case. I'm not sitting here to give opinions about how he looks, how scary and creepy his eyes look, because that's part of my job as a mental health counselor. You have to read beyond that. Check his behavior. They're telling us clearly that there was no motive and there was no targets. There was no connections between Koberger, the victims, and the surviving roommates. That should say everything. Please like, share, and subscribe.